So Screencast 2 is another short screencast, and the purpose of this is that we look at and just revisit some of the concepts from last week before we then move on to look at how organisations develop their business level strategy. So what we're really doing here is we're spending a little bit more time just revisiting the value chain, which is one of the tools that we used last week and we looked at last week, which enables you to analyse the resources of an organisation and identify its strengths and weaknesses. So when we think about the value chain, the purpose of the value chain is that it helps managers understand the processes by which companies create value for customers. So what are the value creating activities for an organisation, and therefore success for themselves, whether this is for private businesses generating a profit or whether it's for non-profit organisations achieving other goals such as participation or success in sport or social goals. And they need to understand the role of resources, the resources that they have, and the distinctive competencies that are required within the value chain in this process. So I think what it's important to understand is all the functions or activities of an organisation, and we might be talking about production, marketing, product development, service, information systems, materials management and human resources. All of these things have a role in developing the 4 building blocks of competitive advantage. Now, I'd almost ask you to pause the video here and ask yourself, can I remember what the 4 building blocks of competitive advantage are? Or if you cannot, maybe go back and just look at week 7's lectures or your notes from week 7 lecture to see if you can remind yourself. And the concept of the value chain, if we think about the functions or the activity areas and the 4 building blocks, helps us understand how we can think about the activities of the organisation and how we can think about the 4 building blocks of competitive advantage and how the 4 building blocks have got a role in each stage of the organisation's activities. Now, if that sounds complicated, let's just remind ourselves what a typical value chain looks like. So we said last week that the value chain consists of primary activities, which I'm highlighting here and which run from, for example, research and development through production, marketing and sales to customer service. So from the design of the product through to the making of it, through to the selling of it, through to support and customer service and after sales, post-purchase, okay? So those are all the kind of primary, if you like, customer-facing activities that are involved in the production of the good or service. And then we've got support activities. So we have information systems, material management and human resources. And what we said last week is that a combination of these and different combinations of these could be used at each stage, within the primary activities of the value chain. So if we're using information systems and human resources, what information systems does the organisation require? Has it got very good information systems and human resources which allow it to produce research and design its products better than anybody else? So it has better design, better research, it builds in more features, which would allow it to charge a premium price. Or does it have information systems which allow it to do things more cheaply and more efficiently? And are its human resources lean, so that the costs of human resources, its production and its processes are actually lean and reduce costs so it can be more efficient and have a cost advantage. So what we saw is that in each of these primary activities, these support activities might have a different role, yeah, and a different mix. So that was the value chain. And we'll look at how the value chain has been deployed by different organisations later in this lecture. Now, what I've done here is I've tried to take some of those value chain activities. So here we can see the primary activities: research, development, production, marketing, sales, and customer service. And at the top here, the top three rows, we can see the support activities. And what we're saying here is that the organisation, you could complete this as a template and say, okay, in terms of information systems, how could information systems help us in our production activity, say, become more efficient? And you could write ideas for how the organisation could become more efficient. How could our information systems help us to produce superior quality products or services and offer those to the customer? How can our use of information systems help us to increase the innovation in the way that we produce goods? How can information systems help us to become more responsiveness in the way that we produce goods? And so there are different things here which we can talk about as we move through this lecture. But the main thing to think about is that for each value creation process in the left-hand column, we can say, how does the organisation achieve superior efficiency, superior quality, superior innovation, and superior customer responsiveness? So these are the four building blocks. Okay, so the challenge for managers is, well, what are our priorities? Are we going to become more efficient, develop more quality, have better innovation, or try to improve our customer responsiveness? Okay, so that really is just revisiting some concepts that we talked about last week. If you're feeling I'm still unsure about those, then hopefully as we look through, not in the next screencast, but in Screencast 4 and 5 and to some degree 6, then hopefully you'll understand a bit more about how some of these building blocks have been applied by different organisations at different stages of the value chain.